I built my sense of self-worth through differentiation, and I leaned on it really heavily. As a kid, I grew up quite insecure. And every time I met someone, I would take stock of what I thought were their strengths and weaknesses, just to make sure that I could do something that they couldn't. I think to some degree, I had this fear that in some post apocalyptic scenario where we only have enough resources for one person, if that one person could do everything that I could do, but better, that I had no reason to exist. And so what happened in reality is every time I met someone, I would choose increasingly specific things just to make sure that I could do something that they couldn't. For example, most people didn't play violin, and meanwhile, I practiced a bunch. So I would be totally covered in the post apocalyptic scenario where aliens have captured you, and they're like, you must be able to play a violin, or else we're going to abduct you. And then whenever I met someone who was really good at violin, then I would choose something even more niche. I would choose whether or not they're good at recounting the minutia of my childhood from ages 3 to 5. And no one was good at that except for my parents, but my parents were worse than me at violin. As a kid, I just didn't think of the fact that maybe you might need two people to do something, or that these hypotheticals were incredibly unlikely. But I found comfort in that knowledge that I could do something that others couldn't. So as I got older, my self-worth grew to be more tied with what others thought of me. I wanted other people to like me. In high school, I had a lot of attractive friends, and they were very regularly being asked out by others. I felt a little left out by this, I was concerned about whether or not I was likable or desirable. So as a response to that, I leaned into trying to be more interesting, to assuage my own concerns. And this meant I had a very achievement-oriented mindset around deciding what to do. I would choose options entirely based off of whether or not I thought they would make for a good story afterwards, and for what beliefs I could hold about myself if I were to be able to do certain things. I wanted to be the kind of person who could take risks, become friends with strangers, or accomplish physical feats. I thought of myself as this player controlling a character, where you don't really care much for the character's own wants and needs, you just make them do whatever you think is most interesting so that you can have fun playing the game. And so I would commit myself to these obligations by tying myself to them socially. For example, I would tell people, oh, of course, I'm happy to sign up for this half Ironman, even though I have very little desire to run or to swim. But I liked being able to think of myself as someone who could go and do a half Ironman. And in hindsight, this approach was actually quite good for me. I ended up doing a lot of things that I'm grateful to have done in hindsight. I ended up traveling a bunch, working abroad, competing, investing in alternative investments, and it built up my sense of self-confidence. I made a lot of friends and memories that I'm eternally grateful for. But now I'm left with this problem where I don't know what I like doing in and of itself. There's a lot of interesting things when I consider achievement or novelty or social validation, but that's quite a bit different from wanting to do things just because you're continuously intrigued and drawn by them. So my current approach is basically just to do random things and to see how it feels to have done them afterwards. And this is kind of a weird relationship to have. The logical analysis of whether or not I'm enjoying something is destructive for my enjoyment of that thing. If I'm doing something and I think about, am I enjoying this right now? That takes me out of the moment. That destroys the experience. So I have to keep those two quite far apart. And towards this end of trying to learn more about my own genuine interests, recently I read The Agony of Eros by byung-chul, and in it he talks about this concept of the other. And the other is basically everything that you don't understand, but that you're intrigued by because you don't understand it. So the other creates this tension that challenges and disrupts you. It can come out in fear of the unknown, or the desire for something different, something missing, or inspiration that seems to come from nowhere and that you don't really understand, but it propels you nonetheless. Even as you try to better understand it and learn about it, it continuously shifts and eludes you. So for example, consider the inexplicable draw you have to a nascent relationship where there's something about them that intrigues and excites you, and you don't really understand it, but that's exactly what makes it invigorating. You don't know what it could be. And byung-chul makes this critique of contemporary society. Where there's something we don't understand, but that intrigues us, we feel the need to collect all this information, to analyze the other. There's this underlying belief that the logical understanding will lead to an improved ability to maneuver in the future. It's quite a rationalist approach, and it's one that I employed for much of my life. But I've kind of lost faith in that approach. I think it's quite good for completing things, but it's not at all good for helping me understand what my true passions are. In Against Interpretation, Susan Sontag makes a somewhat similar critique. She says that contemporary society feels the need to interpret art, that the point of art for us has become whatever the artist's message is. And so we have this sense of wanting to dominate the art through analysis and understanding. What was the artist trying to say? So we consider all this stuff about the artist, what their background was, what the historical context was, and we go to the plaque. And we want the plaque to tell us, what should we think about this art? What does it mean? As opposed to just indulging in the sense experience of perceiving that art. What is it like to be shaken or swayed or confused by a piece of art? If our intent is to live life in the present and to feel things fully, to engage with them as they are, then this need for interpretation can be damaging to that experience. Going back to Byung-chul, he makes a similar critique about dating. Relationships are exciting when there's tension from latent potential and desire. There's the allure of the other, of what we don't know about what this relationship could be, but we're intrigued by it. And in current society, we have this deluge of information and excess optionality that detracts from that tension. Why would you fantasize if you could just go see someone else or look up more information about them?
I don't even know what my type is anymore. It's like, yes, definitely not. Maybe if I'm on the west side, no, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I just can't keep up with this stuff.
You know what your problem is? You got too many options, man.
Variety's the spice of life.
I think this behavior is all too common. Who doesn't have a story of stalking a potential date through a mutual friend or comparing options? Maybe one person is 6 feet tall, but the other person's 6 inches long. Are we more likely to find fruitful relationships or to have a fun time dating when we know more about them at the outset, or when we can run away to other options? So in my own quest for uncovering autotelic interests, I've grown disillusioned by the dreams wrought by achievement and analysis, and turned to the more meditative approach of trying to observe how I feel. And seeking inspiration while protecting it from your anxiety and the parts of you that want to dominate it through understanding is incredibly difficult. I agonize over whether things are effective, like whether or not this video is properly conveying my ideas. And then I ask, is that even what I want from this video? To create something that's effective at communicating? Or is it enough that it's fun to make? What can I do if agonizing over whether or not it's effective detracts from the fun? And how should I negotiate that balance? So towards that end, I have some questions for you. I'm curious how you discovered your own passions, about how you were able to identify them as passions, and how you were able to protect those passions from outside corrosive influence. I'm also curious about the journeys that has led you on and what you've learned. Thanks for watching.